Mr. Adetokunbo Obayan, a leadership consultant, joins us next as we talk leadership today. Thank you for coming on again today.
It's a pleasure.
Well, this is one key area that people love to talk about, and rightly so too, because a lot depends on that. And in the last 365 days, what have you seen?
It's been interesting. I mean, the 365 days. One interesting thing that I noticed as I sat down outside thinking is the fact that it shows how fast time flies. I mean, a year ago, we were looking at 4 years of a Buhari administration. Now we're looking at 3 years of a Buhari administration. And one of the things that implies is that when you look at the issue of leadership, it means that time is not your friend, and it's not always on your side. Over the year that has passed through, there have been challenges, obviously. There is the fact that the president came into office and probably discovered something that he did not expect in terms of the state of our economy, the state of our finances. But then, ironically, that's still really not a serious explanation or excuse. Because the reality is that anybody who is entering a leadership position must be aware that what you anticipate is not what you're going to run into. And number two, even when you run into what you anticipate originally, it will change by the day. Basically, as Howard Macmillan said, that the biggest challenge facing men in leadership is events. And he said events happen so often and so fast that you see that happening. So the reality of it is leadership over the last 1 year has had certain areas where there have been gaps. There have been some positive things in terms of the fact that, well, the president came in with a reputation for sternness and for some level of probity. Now, that to some extent has been supported. And I'm careful to say to some extent because it's good to be factual in analysis. The fact that we are finding out that those who were involved in obvious crimes are beginning to pay for it has some implication for leadership in the sense that we are setting a model that there is a price to be paid for things that go wrong. And to that extent, there has been that kind of leadership. But I think there has still remained a big challenge, which I've always said before. The biggest problem in Nigeria is the issue of the fact that the people are not part of the discussion. Leadership is about people. It's not about programs. It's not about even policies. It's not about activities. It's about the perceptions of the people.
Do you think the leaders understand that part?
That's been a problem. Over the years, somehow, as a nation, we're not familiar, and it's also, to an extent, a generational thing. The younger generation, that's why you talk of social media and things, they are more aware of the fact that getting the people along is the key essence of leadership. That the people are your number one resource. That we've been saying that over the years, but the older generation came from a concept, and we still have embedded that in our management of our organizations, where the leadership was actually about dictatorship, and I'm not talking military dictatorship, I mean a benevolent authoritarian capacity from someone who is on top, telling us what he's about to do. And our necessity of our understanding it was not critical. Just like...
It reminds me of that argument, the benevolent dictator, and they say, what is that?
Exactly. You have a situation in Nigeria, for example, where even in our families, fathers have this idea that when they have established what the rules should be, the children are just supposed to comply. And it's a cultural thing based with our historical context. That was where leadership started. But because of changes in the last many years, we are beginning to, get a society globally where the man on the street can engage the process, both for technological reasons and also for the level of education that's aware. Right now, if you look at Nigeria of today, the number of graduates we have in our nation compared to the graduates, when I went to university, I went to Ife in those days, we were 6,000 students. And we used to celebrate the fact that the 6,000 strong students of University of Ife. And now the numbers are 35,000 or beyond in that same university. And that tells you the number of people who are coming out of school with a level of knowledge. And the biggest challenge our leaders have is this change of conception, that any program that you're putting in place, for example, take the things that the government has done. One area that they must be commended on is Boko Haram issue, for example, which they set out to do. There has been a lot of progress there. I know people who are involved in that sector. But there's a gap. I was listening to the Minister for Environment talking, and she's impressed me as a very bright person. She knows her onions. But I kept on waiting for the section that would tell me where the Nigerian on the street is part of that equation. And if he's not part of that equation, then you have not harvested his contribution to where we're growing. You have not inspired him. We have the same problem. We are collecting money back from those who have stolen the money, but we have not said to the Nigerian person, this is how the people become part of the process of probity.
Maybe, is it possible that the politicians are thinking that the Nigerians, because they've had so much of distrust over the years, will not buy into the idea of them coming to help to run things? Is it possible?
I don't think that's the problem, because we've not had a culture of doing it. So it's not as if we've tested this thing down the line. I mean, last time I was here, I was talking about the fact that Mr. President, for example, needs to talk to the people more. But he's trying to begin to do that, so I should give him credit that he's listening. But the problem is that the conversation that we're asking that tells the people is not just informational. It's supposed to be about, we are in this together.
How can that conversation be had? Is it through an agency, because we have a National Orientation Agency, is it through the agency, or which other ways can that conversation be had? So that it's not just, it should be, as you said, trickle down even to the little child.
I think the first thing that we need to do, fundamentally, which has been missing, is that the government needs to articulate a proper vision. The manifesto is not a vision. The manifesto is a list of promises. The government needs to say to the people of Nigeria, our intentions over the next, now 3 years, is to shape a nation where this and this and this become the order of the day. Now, when they articulate that, they need to find ways. There are many possible ways. It could be through town hall meetings, which they've begun to do. It could be through social media. But they need to, it could even be through promotional programs that they put in place. But you see, the National Orientation Agency can only work when its direction has been set by the leaders. Now, the problem we are having, as a matter of fact, if you ask the man on the street, is that the typical Nigerian has no idea of really what we are trying to achieve as a nation. It's nice to take people who have stolen money. I'll give you a simple example. A friend of mine went to make a proposal to a major federal parastatal in this bill of anti-corruption. And he was invited to meet with one of the executive directors who said, have a private meeting with me. And the executive director said, listen, this is your project, I've seen the amount. You need to add this figure, otherwise we will not approve it, and that's for me. I'm talking about in this day and age. This is not in the years of Jonathan. This is in this era. It's less than a month ago. Now, the question at the end of the day is, when that scenario occurs, what is the process by which that person is supposed to get redress? What is it that makes that person able to, should make that person able to say without paying a price, I won't play ball? Now, you see, at the end of the day, these are the challenges you are talking about. We need, as a nation, to begin to articulate a vision. In the 1 year that the government has been in office, that's been a gap. There is not an articulated vision. It's as if what we are dealing with are the problems of the past. Now, we must deal with the problems of the past, so nobody should get me wrong. I'm not criticizing the government for doing that. We need to do that, otherwise they will kill us. But the problems of the past cannot be our major focus. Our major focus has got to be the direction of the future. That's what leadership, that's why Napoleon said, a leader is fundamentally a dealer in hope. It is the hope that actually begins to mobilize and motivate the people. Of course, before you can give them hope, you must face the brutal facts. There are issues at stake. But then you must say to them, but this nation can turn around, and this is where we are going. Now, that's been absent from the discussion. We haven't seen, in fact, I listened to different ministers, many of who are competent, and Mr. President kept his promise. He brought a lot of competent people into office. But I see as if they're all saying different things at different purposes because they're not singing to a single script.